It is finally here. I waited about a month for it, very patiently, silently, but it's finally here. The Sony A7R5. More importantly, my Sony A7R5. In this video, let's talk about 5 reasons why you might want to upgrade to the Sony Alpha A7R Mark V. Now, before we dig deep into why I got the A7R5 and about why you might want to do the same, let me tell you a bit about the cameras that I've been using in the past year. Last year, I got the Sony A7 IV. I was planning to get the Sony A7R4, but really, because a lot of work that I've been doing in the past year and even last year, which made me decide to get the A7 IV, I've been doing a lot of video content, obviously. And if you've been watching on this channel, I've done a lot of videos with the A7 IV, and it's a decision that I never really had to regret. I never regret pushing back on getting the R4 because ultimately this was coming. I had no idea that it would come this year, but thankfully it came just a year after I got the A7 IV. So for the past year, I've been using the A7 IV for all the content that I've been doing, all the reviews, and even the casual photography that I do every day. However, for the bigger requirements such as my architectural clients, or maybe when I foresee that I'm going to be doing large prints, I've been using my A7R3, or sometimes I get the A7R4 loaner that Sony Philippines lends me. Now, for transparency, I think if you're not new to the channel, then you would know that I am actually a Sony Philippines brand ambassador. And even then, anything that I talk about when it comes to Sony gear is, of course, always out of my honest experience, out of my prudent recommendations as well. But yeah, going back, I've been using the A7 IV for videos and for content and casual photos, and either the R3 or the R4 that I borrow whenever I would need it for clients or for big prints. And that's actually the first reason why I got the A7R5, or why I even wanted the A7R4 last year. The reason why is, of course, resolution, and that's number one. Of course, the A7R5 has a 61 megapixel sensor. It's actually 62.5, but the effective pixels are 61 million. So it's a 61 megapixel sensor, same as the A7R4, but obviously this comes with a whole lot more. Now, in case you're asking, why do I need a 61 megapixel camera? Well, obviously it's for clients who need prints that are really big. I've had clients who wanted to cover their entire office wall with either my cityscapes or the architectural photos of their building. And it's always easier to enlarge and print big, of course, when you have ultimately a larger photo to start with. I wanted to make it a point that whenever I would need to print big, I will have the most image resolution that I needed. And that could be for personal prints that I would want to make for my home, or for example, I want to give prints, or of course, for people who want to buy the prints as well. Now the question is, do I always need 61 megapixels? Absolutely not. However, the principle here is that whenever I do need it there, I do have it there. In this case, it's always better to have more than just selectively reduce what you have, instead of having less and just keep pushing it towards a limit that you can't ever reach. Yes, of course, it's going to mean it's going to take up more storage when it comes to my hard drives and the SD cards and all that. But you get to a point wherein that is just always a secondary effect of having more information, of having bigger photos, and ultimately just future-proofing your stuff. The second reason is, of course, the new menu system. If you're coming from, say, the A7R3 or the A7R4, then this is going to be an ultimately new menu system for you. If in case you have the A7 IV or the A7S III, then you would feel at home quite easily. However, again, if you're using an older body, this menu will take a bit of your time to get used to it, but I assure you this is going to be much more helpful and much more efficient for you. The menu system on the A7R5 is basically a kind of upgraded version of what we have on the A7 IV with some new features in it. The first main difference that you would see is this new tab on the menu system, which is the main page, which somehow gives you a summary of all the settings that you have on the spot. And along with that menu system, you also have the same sub-dial below the mode dial, which is the photo, video, and SNQ dial that you have also on the A7 IV. Now, I have said this before, but I will say it again. No matter if you have the new menu system in the A7R5 or the A7 IV or the A7S III, or you have older Sony cameras with the older menu system, the easiest way to use your camera is by using all the custom buttons, which also of course comes with the A7R5. We basically have the same number of custom buttons as the A7 IV, as well as the customizable dial on this side. Owning and using a Sony camera means taking about 15 minutes of your time to set all these extra buttons to your liking so that you never would have to browse through the menu ever again. Or maybe just a few times every now and then. Now, the third reason is, of course, the new AF system. Now, this of course has 567 AF points scattered over 74% of the entire frame. If this was to represent your frame, which it actually does, it basically covers this much, and you can basically point and track your focusing towards any part of that. But of course, that is not the main thing about the focusing system of the A7R5. The big thing about this is AI autofocus, artificial intelligence. AI autofocus is basically AF tracking and subject recognition on steroids, basically. What it does is it has a more advanced way of tracking and identifying whatever subject you choose. At the same time, it somehow kind of guesses wherever it will pop up again in case, for example, your subject turns around and the eyes are covered, or your subject is wearing a hat or a veil. And of course, in addition to human eye AF, Sony has had the bird eye AF and the animal eye AF for years now. However, they added insect eye autofocus. I haven't tried it, but I actually want to see which eye it would choose on maybe a bug that has a million eyes or whatever. It also has cars and trains and even planes. Imagine that. Tracking on cars for automotive photography, for race cars, which I believe is a bit of a tricky thing to do because of course the cars are really fast. So that's something I'm looking forward to trying. I've never done that, maybe it's about time. And planes, goodness. One of the things I like doing is to include planes in the frame whenever I shoot architecture, and I think that is perhaps the most applicable aspect of the AI autofocus for me and as a landscape and architectural photographer. I do hope they also add some more features that will use AI autofocus for landscape photography and for night photography. So I do hope that comes out. I do think it's doable. I am, of course, no software engineer. I don't know how these things work. But given the fact that it can focus on planes and eyes of insects and all that, I think somehow they could do something that would help us focus on the night sky or the moon, for example. Fingers crossed. Now the fourth reason, well, this is obviously not a video-centric camera. The A7R line has always been, of course, focusing on resolution, which is something more crucial for certain types of photography. And again, of course, this is perfect for me as a landscape and architectural photographer. But if I ever do need to use this for video, this is also very capable. In fact, I kind of think that this is a beefed up version of my A7 IV because of course I love the video features on the A7 IV. The IAF tracking has always been perfect, and that's, as I said, I never have to think about the focusing whenever I'm shooting videos. And the same would of course apply here, maybe even better with the AI autofocus. In addition, of course, all the video capabilities of the A7 IV that I use is basically here. So if ever I need two cameras for video, or for example, I would need the A7 IV to shoot the photos for a demo, for example, I can still use the A7R5 with the same settings, with the same feel, with the same everything. So all the video functions that I have on the A7 IV can be replicated on the A7R5 with the same handling and with no problem at all. And lastly, the fifth reason is of course the screen. Now, this screen is the first thing I checked when I first got this camera. And basically, it's so simple yet so complex at the same time. It's basically everything I loved about the screen of the A7R3, of the A7R4, which is basically the fact that the screen goes up like that. That way, when I'm shooting landscapes, for example, from a low angle, I can very easily see it. And I think most people are used to this type of screen, right? But of course, anyone who has been shooting with the A7S3, with the A7 IV, with the A7C, you love the fact that the screen also goes that way, and the screen also goes that way. So what Sony did is basically put everything in one screen. It goes up that way, you can even pull it out a bit, and of course it can go like that, and all that. So it's everything, literally any direction that you may have wanted your camera screen to go, the screen of the Sony A7R5 can do. And sometimes that seems so trivial, but when you're out in the field, when you are maybe holding a particular stance because you're on top of a rock that is somewhat unstable, or you're shooting very low or very high angle, and you're shooting vertical, for example, that means a lot. That means a lot to making sure that your composition is right. And at the same time, that means a lot to make sure that you can hold your position for a long while. Because believe me, I've had to slouch down or to bend my knees, for example, just to see what's on the screen because I was on vertical and it wouldn't flip up that way. So instead, they put it just like that. So it's literally basically putting the two screens that I like together and just coming up with a screen that can go to every direction that I needed to go. And there we go. Those are the 5 reasons why I got the A7R5 and the 5 reasons why you might want to consider it as well. And obviously, this is not a review. I don't ever release camera reviews without proper access to the raw files. And as a Lightroom and Photoshop user, I am still waiting for that. However, this is basically me raving about my new camera. But really, all these things are things that you should consider if you are in the market for a new high-resolution, full-frame mirrorless camera. There's definitely so much more to say about the A7R5, and of course, I'm going to take more time to bring this out and to shoot with it, and of course, I'm going to wait for the raw support for Lightroom before I give anything further about this camera. But definitely, I'm excited to be working with this camera. I'm also thrilled about my new L bracket. I got this from a friend in Vietnam. The brand is Stabil. If you are looking for a really nice Sony colored L bracket, or maybe black or camo, then they have it for you. I'll link it down below if you want it. In any case, this is the Sony A7R5. If you have questions, leave them down below in the comment section. And if you are new to the channel, my name is Nicco Valenzuela, the guy who's been raving about the A7R5 for the past 10 minutes. I am a landscape and architectural photographer, as I've said, and this channel basically talks about everything about that. If you are into that, then please click the subscribe button and the notification bell so that I see you on the next videos. And of course, to all of you, thanks for watching.